Morning. Just a forewarning for you. 3 days this week I was with 7th graders on an overnight trip to the Keys. And I got back and we had a retreat last night. And so I am not responsible for anything that might or might not come out of my mouth. It is sleep deprivation. And so it's awesome. It's been a great week. And just because Pastor Andy did not make it clear, Sarah was at the retreat last night too. All right, so it wasn't just me in my house. All right, Sarah was there. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm ready for them to leave. So when I was in seminary, I was a poor seminary student, much like all poor seminary students, and so a buddy of mine offered to let me move into his house for free. Free rent sounds really, really good when you're not making any money, and so I moved into his house with his family, and for 6 months it was awesome. It was really, really great. Place to stay, place to keep my stuff. I mean, it was awesome. And then the HOA decided that they wanted to get involved, and overnight parking in visitor spots was no longer allowed. That was a problem for me because I was not on a lease and I didn't have a parking decal, so therefore I was parking in these overnight spots all over the place. So I made a plan. I got this figured out. I owned a bicycle, and the church office that I worked for was about 6 miles just north of where my buddy lived, and so I was going to park my truck at the church office, get on my bike, ride to his house, sleep there, wake up, ride back to my truck, and that was just going to be my life. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait. I enjoy bicycling. I'm going to lose some weight, which you can see. And so I get on the bike, I get to the office, I get on the bike, and I'm going to time trial this thing. I want to see how long it's going to take me. And so I'm cruising, right? Lance Armstrong's got nothing on me. I'm rolling. And the route that I took, there were 3 roundabouts. So I cruised through the first one, no problem. Cruise through the second one, no problem. And finally, I get to the third one where it's the straightaway, the final straight shot to his house. And the first 2 were really easy because you just followed the sidewalk down into the crosswalk and then got to the other side. The third one didn't do that. The third one, the sidewalk went to the right and then immediately to the left and then angled to the other side. So I'm cruising, and I see this, and I have to maneuver this. Suddenly, Lance Armstrong disappears, and I take his place. So I maneuver this way, and I maneuver back that way, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I look back, and as I'm looking back, I don't notice that the angle is this way, and I hit the opposite curve with the front tire, flip over the bike, hit a tree, bike lands on top of me, I'm bleeding, I'm bruised. And I know what you're thinking. Mack, stay away from bicycles. I call Sarah, and she, the loving, supportive woman that she is, laughs at me. Like a lot. She's like, how'd it go? And she said, did you make it? I said, almost. She said, what does almost mean? And I explained to her, and I could not hear words come out of her after that because there was so much laughter. And I called my buddy and I said, hey, you've got to come pick me up. My tire is done. My bike is done. I'm hurt. And so he said, I'll be there in a few minutes. And as I'm sitting there, reliving this moment in my mind, feeling the pain of bruises and bumps and cuts, this girl starts running by. She's on her nightly jog. And she sees me and she goes, how you doing? How do I look like I'm doing? And I said, I've been better. And she goes, okay, and just keeps running. Like she's not dealing with me at all. And I tell that story because that night I made a choice. I made a choice that was, I'm going to choose to ride my bike, and as a result, decisions would have to follow. Choices and decisions mark our lives over and over again. The choices we make now do affect decisions we will make later. You chose to come to church today. That was your choice. Based on your experience here, or based on whether you feel you need to, you have a decision to make for next week about whether or not you are going to come back. You can choose to give money here, and then you can choose how much or how little to give, and you can choose to do that, or you can choose not to, and then it's our decision as a church body to figure out how we're going to spend that money to do the ministry of the Lord. Choices and decisions, our lives are marked by them, and the big idea today is this: our choices today impact our decisions tomorrow. The things that you choose to do today impact and change what might happen tomorrow. They affect it. There's an overwhelming, everlasting effect of our choices. And so Jesus comes in, and what I want to do today is I want to look at this text and figure out what is the better way to choose. What's the best way to make choices that impact our decisions for eternity? What's the best way to make choices for things that God can continually use to expand His kingdom and make His name great and glorified throughout all the earth? And so I want to go back and look at the text a little bit. Matthew 22, starting in verse 15, it says, "Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap Him in His words. They sent their disciples to Him along with the Herodians. 'Teacher,' they said, 'we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what's your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?'" This is a trap. What's going on here is there are two groups of people. You've got your Pharisees over here and your Herodians over here. These two groups do not like each other, but they come together because there's one thing that they have in common. They don't like Jesus at all. And so you've got your Pharisees who are the keepers of the law, the keepers of everything righteous. They want to look at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They've got it memorized. They know where things are supposed to go in the temple, how to make sacrifices. The law is everything to them, and they want to keep that true. The Herodians are kind of the opposite. They serve a guy named King Herod, who was a self-proclaimed king of the Jews. He worked for Caesar, and he would charge and tax people beyond measure and keep some of the money. There's something to the effect of between 45 and 50% of Jews paid that percentage on their taxes. Their income, immediately, you get half. And so they tried to trap Jesus in this. Hey, Jesus, is it right to pay the imperial tax? The Pharisees are hoping that Jesus says, no, don't pay the tax. Because if he says, yes, pay the tax, then what he's done is he has sided with Caesar, and he is seen as a Roman supporter. And so they want him to do that because they're like, hey, if you do that, then we can talk about how you're a blasphemer and you're crazy, and people will stop listening and following you because you've broken the second commandment. The Herodians want Jesus to say not to pay the tax, because if he says not to pay the tax, then they can arrest him for treason. And so these two groups come together and they say, let's make him make a choice. Let's make him choose one or the other. And so they butter him up a little bit. Hey, Jesus, you're such a good teacher. You're so smart. You're not impacted by what other people say. You're just great, man. Can we ask you a question? Should we pay the imperial tax or no? This is the same kind of thing that the world says. The world would tell us to choose us. When it comes to a choice, you choose what's going to benefit you most. You choose what's going to make you happiest. You choose what's going to give you the most joy. You choose for you. Flatters us a little bit, right? You're really pretty. You're so pretty. Don't you want to be a little bit prettier? Why don't you spend some money and either get some surgery or buy this product or buy these things and do this, this, and this, and then you'll be prettier and you'll feel better. You deserve more money. You've got a lot right now, but you deserve a little bit more. And so here's what you should do. The money that you've been given to charity or to church or whatever, hold on to that and treat yourself to something really, really nice because you're entitled to it. You deserve it. Do it for you. Your kid is really talented, or you are really, really talented. And so why don't you put all of your time and effort into your talents? Because you want to be better at it, right? You deserve it, and you've worked hard for it, and they've worked hard for it, and so give them what's theirs, and you get what you want. And the problem with this choosing is it's a very slippery slope into an area that God has not designed us for. C.S. Lewis, who's a famous Christian author, writes a book called The Screwtape Letters. And in this book, what he says is, he talks that there are the devil, the ultimate devil, and then he's got junior devils. And the junior devils go around and their sole purpose is to try and convince people that God isn't real and that they should get what they want. And this is how he writes this. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, the soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. You don't follow Jesus and choose Jesus day in and day out and one day wake up and go, no, I'm not going to do it anymore, and just go the opposite direction. It's a gradual thing. It's a let me take mine here, let me do what I want here, let me slip this in and slip this in and slip this in and slip this in and do this and do what I want to do and do what I want to do, and all of a sudden you look back and you go, how did I get here? And here's what I want to say right here. I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody into anything. So if you're already like, oh no, I feel guilty, stop. You are forgiven and redeemed by Christ. What I want us to know more than anything is that Christ is worth pursuing and choosing day in and day out. And so the world would say, choose you. Text continues. Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, whose image is this and whose inscription? Caesar, they replied. And he said to them, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Jesus knows their intent. You guys are Pharisees and Herodians. You don't like me. You're not just going to come up and give me compliments. And so he looks at them and he goes, you guys are hypocrites. You didn't believe a single thing you said about me. You're trying to trap me, and all you really want, you don't want anybody to choose anything but you. What's right? Which one should I choose? Hey, let me see a coin real quick. And so they give him a denarius, a coin of the time, and on the front of it was the face of Caesar, and on the back of it was Caesar's inscription, which named him the high priest. And so he's looking at it, and I can see him flipping it back and forth, and he points to one side, and he says, whose image is this? And then on the back he says, well, whose inscription is this? And they say, Caesar's. And Jesus does something so tremendous here, where he says, then you give to Caesar what's Caesar, and give to God what's God's. What Jesus says is, choose God. Now here's what that means. That does not mean that you have to give up everything that you love and adore and things that you want to do. Jesus doesn't say give up everything and only give to God. He says, no, give back to Caesar what's Caesar's and give to God what's God's. You have things that you like your talents, you like beauty, you like money, you like these things, that's fine. There is a place for that and you can enjoy that, but that stuff better not take away from who Jesus is. You can only give to Caesar what is Caesar's. You can only give to the world what is the world's. But you cannot give to the world what rightfully belongs to God. Jesus is not worried in this moment because he understands that the only reason that Caesar is seated on a throne at all is because the Lord has allowed him to be. And so he says it's all going to work out in the end. But choose Jesus. Choose me. When I was growing up, we were in church all the time. Sundays were church days. That was it. We went to church. And so I played sports growing up, and soccer, baseball, birthday parties. If those fell on a Sunday morning, I was either showing up late or I was going to miss it because we were not going to miss church. We were not going to do it. And that set a precedent in my life that I watched, and I said, okay, church is important, Jesus is important, and so when I went off to college, what I finally understood was I need to get plugged into a church and be serving somewhere. My parents decided that that was going to change when my little sister came along. She's much more of an athlete than me. She was really, really good at soccer, and so they decided, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, instead, we're going to put all of our time and money and things into soccer. And so they spent a lot of money on private training sessions. They spent a lot of time, weekends away. They would come back, and the last thing that they wanted to do if they had a free weekend was go to church because they needed to use Sunday to catch up on things that they hadn't done the last 2 or 3 weekends while they were away at tournaments. I love my little sister a lot, but she went to college with a mindset that Jesus was second rate. I will choose whatever I want first, and then if I need him, I'll pull Jesus out. And so she lived the college dream. She partied, she did what she wanted, and it's only been in the last few months that she, who's now since graduated and is living on her own, has decided, you know what, maybe this church thing is probably important. The decisions my parents made, the choices my parents made, affected her decisions. It's a slippery slope. God says, there's nothing wrong with soccer, Mack family. You guys like soccer? Play soccer. But do not let soccer become your God. Do not put Jacqueline Mack on the throne where I belong. And it's a slippery, slippery slope. The text ends, and when they heard this, they were amazed, so they left him and went away. A lot of times when you see Jesus do a miracle or a teaching, at the end of it, it has a conversion story where it says, and that person followed him, or he sent that person into the city to preach the good news about what God had done for them, or he's told them to go to the multitudes. And you see these conversion stories time and time again, and then you have a few where it just says they went away. People just go away. You have it with the rich young ruler who goes away sad. You have it here who they're amazed that Jesus has caught them and answered the question, and they leave him. Here's what that means, though. The kingdom doesn't stop on behalf of those people. Like, the fact that these guys tried to trick Jesus and whatever, and they go away sad, did not stop Jesus from giving up his life on a cross, being buried in a tomb, and rising again on the third day. It didn't stop the kingdom from moving forward. It didn't stop the apostles from planting churches all throughout the world. It did not stop when 2,000 years later we're sitting in this room singing worship songs and glorifying God with our praises. It didn't stop. And so the kingdom moves on whether you choose God or you choose self. It goes. It goes. The Lord is not sitting in heaven going, man, if J-Mac would just choose me, we could finally do something. I'm just waiting on him. Come on, dude. That's not how this works. The kingdom goes forward whether you are on board or not. And the Lord says, hey, I'm inviting you to join in with me. There is a movement taking place of my name being glorified throughout all the earth. There is a movement where we are pushing back the kingdom of darkness and bringing forth the kingdom of light. And I want you with me, and I'm inviting you, and I've gifted you, and I can use you in so many ways. But if you decide not to, I'm still going forward. The world would tell us to choose us. Jesus would say, choose me. But regardless of those two things, the kingdom is going forward. So the question becomes, so what? All right, fine, J-Mac, you have convinced me in some way. Now how do I do it? Because you're right, I do. I probably should put Jesus first in more things. I probably should pursue him more in some things. But how do I do it? I'm glad you asked. I got 4 things, I think. 1, make your relationship with the Lord a priority. Not something that you do, a priority. My father-in-law says that if you truly believe in something and if you truly want to do something, you will make it happen. It will become a priority for you if it's important to you. If you want to play golf on Friday, you will work your tail off Monday to Thursday, make sure all your loose ends are tied and your T's are dotted and your I's are dotted, T's are crossed. That's how we do that. And you will get things done so that way you know you can play golf on Friday. If you want to take your family to Disney World, you will do what it takes to save the money. You will do what it takes to take the time off, and you will go. Things that are important to you, you will get done. So the question then is God important to you? Is this something that happens outside of just Sunday mornings? Because it should be. Do you worship him daily? Do you spend time in his word? Do you spend time in prayer? Are you in a small group with people? Do you come to some of the fellowship events that we have? What are you doing to ensure that God is a priority in your life? Because that's where it starts. The second thing is this. Put some teeth to what you value. Pastor Dave gave this to me, and I really, really like it. So if we're going to value God first, then we have to put teeth to what we do, which means actually make a plan for us to carry that thing out. Maybe that means making a mission statement for you and your family, where you say, as a family, we are these 3 things. As the Mack family, we love Jesus, we love our family and our friends, and we seek to make Jesus' name great throughout all the earth. These are the 4 steps that we are going to take to ensure that we do that. This is how I'm going to organize my day to make sure that I do that. This is how we do this. And you put some teeth to it. It's not just something that can go away. It's something that you have to do. The third thing is this: don't sit on the sideline. Part of choosing Jesus means being willing to serve in all things. Being willing to go forth and get off the bench and join in what's happening here. We had over 500 people at this service alone last week. It was insane. There were kids everywhere, Easter eggs all over the place. I mean, it was insanity, and we loved it. But we need more people to step out and serve in those types of things. There are kids right now in the gym at the other end of this campus learning about Jesus, and the only one down there teaching them is Jessica Ballas. She doesn't have a ton of help. We need volunteers. We need kids to see that if we actually value them and we value their growth and we value what the church is doing and what the church is saying, that we are going to be on the front lines of teaching them and showing them the love of Jesus week in and week out. We need it in student ministry. We got me and Sarah. That's about it. And we love it. We love what we do. But man, if we could get more adult presence in there, more people saying, you know what, I remember what it is to be a teenager, and I'd love to branch out and love kids in a different way. Part of choosing Jesus means you don't just come to get fed, you dish out and you do some feeding. It means serving. And the final thing is this: pursue Christ out of conviction, not convenience. Following Jesus is not a convenient thing. My last 10 months of life, I will be happy to sit you down and tell you why that's true. It is not convenient to follow Christ. It's not easy. There are a million things throwing themselves at you to try and get you to decide to not choose Jesus. But we don't follow Jesus because he's convenient. Otherwise, everybody would follow Jesus. We follow him out of conviction, out of a love for him, out of an attitude of humble serving, that a God did not withhold himself from us, but gave himself for us, who died a death that we deserve, was buried in a tomb that is our home, and was rose again on the third day so that we don't have to call a tomb our home. It's out of conviction that we pursue Christ, not out of convenience. And so as we celebrate confirmation today, and we invite these 3 young women who are powerhouses of ladies, who are going to take the church to the next level, who I fully believe in and I know God is going to use, let us choose Christ because he's worth choosing. Let Advent be the one who time and time again says, Jesus, 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 and let's be on the front line bringing forth the kingdom of God. Because when we do that, not only do we get to experience a tremendous amount of joy, but we get to see the Lord working firsthand. So let us be the ones to choose Christ. Amen.